All right, let's get started, everybody. Thank you for your patience. There's always got to be some technical issues somewhere, right? Okay, so today we're here for an introduction to food forests with Black River Foraging Co. This is from Rachel Lachance. She's been a presenter with us a few times before. She's got some really great knowledge to share with us today. I am Louise from the South Porcupine Library. I'm the branch head and founder of the Seed Library, which is already 5 years old. How crazy is that? It's gone by really quick. So just quick Zoom etiquette. This event is being recorded. Please be kind. Feel free to chat or ask questions in the chat. And you can always use your reactions as well. And at the end or near the end, I will be closing the Q&A from the recording, but the rest will be recorded and sent to you after if you wanted to take notes again after. Okay, everybody? And then, so Rachel's been with us before. She's done a few sessions. She's also the owner and founder of Black River Foraging. She began her land-based business in 2016 in response to the global climate crisis by drawing on her background in forestry, ecotourism, and community development. She's currently developing food forests, which is awesome. So she's talking from experience, and they'll be throughout the region, and food security programming as part of her role as Keepers of the Circle, as their food security initiative coordinator, which is probably the most amazing job we can have right now around here in the north, you know, food security. Whew. Rachel's completing her diploma as well as a traditional herbalist, and she holds her registered massage therapy status. So she's like completely enthralled in this type of work and of feeling good and living off grid with her husband and 3 children in Timmins now. We're happy to have her in Timmins instead of a little too far away. Maybe we'll get to visit one day. So I'm imagining that your garden is looking, I imagine your garden looking more like nature. Can you imagine if we can make it a little bit more cohesive? And let's see how we can transform our gardens into this food forest. Rachel, the floor is yours.
Wow, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Oh, hold on a sec. Oh, see, now I'm delayed. Of course.
There's always got to be a few like that.
Yeah.
That's okay.
All right, everybody. So yeah, thank you so much, Louise, for introducing me. I have prepared a little presentation. So I'm going to be talking about food forests today, and kind of just letting you guys know some of the basics and, you know, different considerations for our climate. At the beginning of all of my online workshops, I love to just get people to use the chat and just tell me where you're located right now and what hardiness zone you're in, if you know that. If not, it's okay, you're going to learn what it is. But if you guys all want to use the chat function and just let me know where you're located right now, that would be awesome. I love to see that. And
so you got somebody in the living room, Rachel?
Yeah, that's my husband, Mike. Okay. Yeah, so I also want to encourage you guys to also use the chat for questions throughout the workshop. And yeah, feel free to just kind of be in there and use it. So we have New Liskeard, Timmins, Uxbridge, Lake Erie, cool, Kirkland Lake, Sudbury, lots of Timmins, Cochrane, awesome, Larder Lake, South Porcupine, great. Oh my gosh, that's so great. North Cobalt. And we have some hardiness zones in there too. Thanks, guys. Okay, so I always also like to start with a bit of a land acknowledgement, and especially in these kind of workshops when we're talking about, you know, ecosystems and land, I just want to acknowledge that I'm standing on Treaty 9 territory on traditional lands of Matagami First Nation, and I'm honored to be born on land that has been cared for by the original Anishinaabe peoples and their ancestors since time immemorial. All right, let's get started. So yeah, I mean, Louise already introduced me. Thank you, Louise. I usually have this little spiel at the beginning. So I have a history of like forestry and ecotourism, which is really where my passion for permaculture comes from. So my husband and I, we've been living off grid since, well, we started preparing our off grid. We built a little tiny house out in Matheson and we started preparing it in about 2015. And we lived out there for 7 years. So we didn't even have running water for the first like 5 years. We just used rainwater collection. And in the winter, we had a little sauna in our tiny house and we melted the snow. So that just gives you an idea of like what we've been up to for the last little while. So we moved out to the land in Matheson with a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and an 11-month-old. And it was just a way for us to be able to do the things that we wanted to do and learn the skills that we wanted to learn. So in that time, we, by maybe year 2 or 3, we were probably producing about 70% of our food. And so we were doing a lot of staples and we had a cold cellar where we kept all of our veggies. And of course, we did all the canning and all that kind of stuff. So through that process of living off grid and kind of just like, sort of like dropping everything else and focusing on that for that amount of time, we sort of realized that there's a way to do things that there has to be a way to do things that's in harmony with nature, but also that actually is less work because the way we always want to do things and control all of our environments doesn't always work when you're doing it to survive. So so that's when I started thinking about permaculture. And I actually took my permaculture design certificate through Verge Permaculture. So a lot of this information is based on permaculture, and also my history of my forestry education. Oh, we have a Saskatchewan person too in here. Very cool. So I started Black River Foraging Co. when we lived off grid. It was a way for us to kind of create a little bit of an income. We started off doing herbal remedies and, just different kinds of preserves and stuff from the homestead. So that's really how we started. And then we also, obviously, we did like some ecotourism experiences like plant walks, and I teach canoeing as well. So we were doing lots of little contracts all the time, as well as, foraging for local restaurants and, things like that. We also have, of course, we grow a lot of our own food. So we always grow for ourselves first, and then we sell whatever's left over. In recent years, we've really started to focus on workshop facilitation because we love to share our knowledge. Most of our workshops are sliding scale model, which means that you can either pay for them or you don't have to. So we really feel passionately about sharing information freely with all people. In the last 2 or 3 years, I've also been taking on projects and applying for funding in partnership with local First Nation nonprofits. And that's how we've been able to develop a few of these food forest projects that I'll kind of refer to throughout the presentation. So what we're all here for. So what is a food forest? So when we think about a food forest, we think about, food and medicine. So we always think about like apples or different herbs that we can grow alongside them that we use a lot. And we also think about energy. So we want to cycle energy. We want to use photosynthesis. We want to see photosynthesis happening, of course. We want to see nitrogen fixation. And if you don't know what any of this stuff is, it's okay. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. But food forests can also provide firewood and carbon sequestration. So like really amazing tools for combating climate change. So food forests are the harmonious integration of the landscape with people. They're a purposeful, site-specific plant system designed to support human needs by mimicking natural ecosystems. So to learn how to build a food forest or develop one or plan one or design one, it's really important to understand what is a natural ecosystem and what kind of things does a natural ecosystem provide, because that's what we're mimicking. So we're using nature as our mentor. Okay, so Oh, thanks, Tina. Okay, so when we think about ecosystems, ecosystems provide all kinds of ecosystem services. So if I was really techie, I probably would have kind of, timed this up so I would only open, it would open, slowly. But if you guys want to write in the chat, like, what are your favorite ecosystem services? So for myself, I'm looking out the window here and we have a big steep hill. So for me, one of my favorite ecosystem services, looking right out this window, is erosion control. So I want to make sure that my steep hill doesn't collapse and my house doesn't fall into the pond below. So that's a really important ecosystem service. Other ecosystem services can be, pollination. So we want to make sure that, the plants are getting pollinated and that plants can continue to grow. We want to make sure that the soil is continuing to succeed and to be enriched. Yeah, Mike says relaxation. We obviously in Northern Ontario, what is our main ecosystem service? Well, it's mineral extraction and lumber. So those are all things that are pretty important for our economy. But there's also other things like non-timber forest products. So that's sort of what I do. I forage different plants and then I make herbal remedies and we sell them to support our farm. Darren says education for kids. Yeah, that's a great one. So when you think about everybody is starting to sort of become familiar with this forest school idea, and it's a really fantastic one. Yeah, windbreaks. Thanks, Deborah. Awesome. Yeah, and Joan is saying she lives on a ravine and she's worried about erosion too. So having good healthy ecosystems provides us with clean water because when we have precipitation, the water is falling on the ground and it needs to infiltrate the ground and get into our water table. So there are so many ecosystem services and we, especially as human beings, rely on them a lot. Okay, so I'm just going to close the chat for a sec. So the anatomy of a food forest. So what are all the different pieces of a food forest? So now that we kind of know a little bit, okay, what does an ecosystem provide? Now let's think about what does a food forest look like compared to that? So we have our canopy layer. So that's like our tall trees. So if we're looking outside, most people are probably in the boreal forest. So we have our canopy trees, which are like our, white spruce or pine trees, those big tall trees. And then we have our lower tree layer, our shrub layer, our herbaceous layer. So things like all of the little plants that grow on the ground, all the herbs and those kind of things. And we have our root layer, our soil surface. And then we also have like vine layers, right? So there's all these different pieces and it's not just things that are above the soil, it's also the shape of your root systems. So you want to take up space, with your gilt or with your food forest when you're matching your plants, but you also want to make sure that what's going on under the soil is planned properly as well, because different plants can be like very aggressive, right? And they could take over other plants. So we need to make sure that we're companion planting properly and we're matching different species up that work together. So considerations for planning your food forest. So number one, you're going to want to know what your hardiness zone is. And if you don't know what that is, you can just Google where you live and hardiness zone, and you'll get a little number. So in Timmins, we used to be a 2B, I think, but now we're a 3A. So yeah, so we're a 3A, which is pretty good. So you're going to want to know that. And when you're planning to order trees, you're going to want to probably choose plants that are one hardiness zone below your hardiness zone, just to make sure that they survive, because we do have like pretty aggressive weather. Okay. So that's one thing you want to know because everywhere that you go to order your plants, or even if you're transplanting, you're going to want to be able to look up what is the hardiness zone of this plant. You're going to want to look at climate. So if you're interested in starting a food forest in your backyard, You're going to want to look at things like, is there sunshine back here? Is there a slope back here? Do I have microclimates? And a microclimate is when there's a certain area that is either warmer or colder than the rest of the areas because of different things. Like, you know, you could have
whatever. That's
like
fine. You did a good job. Yeah. 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 No, it looked really good and you sounded good. And yeah, no, it was really good. I knew you'd do a good job.
Whoever's chatting on the phone, can you mute yourself, please?
I know. No, but no, it was good. It was good. But did you see Roz put on there, if there's more than 7 people, it should be a sister, it should be divided up.
Louise, can you tell who that is?
No, I can't.
In our
I've
group.
got it. Is that
She
better?
put-
Denise Atkinson, I think.
She should have said something about a sister circle. So I don't know.
I think, is that it then? She muted? Oh, there we go.
Denise.
Okay.
I thought she was.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry about that, guys. Okay. So the other thing you're going to want to look at
Okay,
is
bye.
things like microclimates.
Thanks.
Oh, there we go. So a microclimate is somewhere like a south-facing brick wall that absorbs heat through the whole day. Like maybe you can grow grapes there that would only grow in a zone 4 in a warmer climate, because the heat that's being absorbed by the bricks all day is being released slowly at night. So that's thermal mass. You can also look at places like if you have a spot in your yard with a huge stone or a rock, that can do the same thing. Ponds are really good microclimates because water is one of the best things to absorb heat and then to release it slowly. So really cool little tidbit is we used to live in Matheson. We had a really big vegetable garden and we lived right on the river. And on nights when the frost would affect a lot of our annual plants, the fog would come up and sort of like settle on our veggie garden, and the frost wouldn't hurt any of the plants. So, microclimates are really good to know about in the space that you're thinking about having a food forest in, because it can affect what kind of plants you can grow and the success of the plants that you do decide to grow. Of course, you need to have access to water. So whether you're collecting water off a roof or you have a hose or a pond nearby that you can collect water from and water your plants, especially in the early years, it's really, really important. Of course, rainwater is always a lot better to use for plants because it's not treated. If you're using town water, I would probably, fill up some 5-gallon pails and let it sit outside or let it sit somewhere and let the chlorine and stuff evaporate. And then of course, you're going to want to know about soil quality. So, a really good way to do this, and we're going to get into it a little bit more deeply in a minute, is just to dig a hole and see what you're dealing with. So in permaculture, when we're designing spaces, we figure out what our sectors are. And so sectors can be, summer sun. So where is our summer sun coming in? And you can find all this stuff by, checking your stats online about where you live, or just using a compass. And then, you can find all this information. So for example, in this situation, this person is like, their house is right here. Say we wanted to put our food forest over here. Well, we have to look at, okay, well, where's the summer sun coming in? Are we going to have enough sun? Where's the winter wind coming in? Because in the early years of a food forest, when you have perennial fruit trees, you want to make sure that you're protecting those little trees from the wind. Number one, the wind is really good at evaporating water off of plants. So you can dry out your plants really easily if they're not protected. But also the winter winds can really do a lot of damage to your fruit trees. And often that's, in my case, that's what's killed them before. That and poor soil quality. In this case, they've also mapped out where their summer winds are, where there's a possibility of flooding. So you might not want to put a bunch of trees close to where there's some, flooding possibilities, because there could be a lot of water down there, and a lot of trees don't like to have wet feet. You want to know where your wildlife is coming in from. And in a lot of the projects that I'm working on right now, we also want to know, where is the pollution coming from? Where are the pollutants? So, is this by a roadside, Or is there a train track nearby? Is there a hydro line crossing somewhere where spraying could be happening? Is there an industrial farmers fields nearby where spraying could also be happening? So, and then especially in Timmins, Kirkland Lake, all these little places in between, there are lots of mining operations and a lot of old mine sites. So I'm actually building a food forest really close by to an old mine site right now, and we're working on a strategy to remediate the soil so that the food will be safe to consume eventually. Okay, so I wanted to get a little bit deeper into soil health, because soil is one of those things that you really have to know a little bit about, or at least be able to observe a little bit. So I wanted to share some indicators of soil health, which is pretty fun. So, if you're digging, so this is a shovelful that Mike, my husband, is holding in his hand. And this is where we actually planted all of our garlic last fall, when we just moved here in the fall. So we had to put our garlic in the fall, in the ground in the fall, sorry. And we had to we were sort of like rushing and trying to find a great spot for it. We're in really heavy clay, but if you notice this soil in his hand, so he's got he just grabbed a handful of dirt and there's earthworms in it. So that's a great sign. We also want to look at the color of the soil, because darker color can indicate higher organic matter. So you want to know that there's some organic matter in there and that we're not just dealing with pure clay. You can also tell soil quality by the condition of plant roots. So if you pull up a plant root and it's really, you know that the plant should be especially in the fall, if you're pulling up a plant root like a dandelion root, you know that the plant root should be pretty long and pretty established. And if you pull it up and it's kind of small and it doesn't look as robust as it should, that's a huge indicator of things like compaction, or poor water infiltration and things like that. Maybe no aeration. And then water holding capacity. So is your soil really dry? Is it blowing away or eroding? Does it drain properly? So maybe it's too wet. And the spot that we actually put our garlic in, it might be too wet. We'll find out this summer if it's going to work or not. Let's see here. No, I don't do biochar, but my neighbor sure does. John Carroll from Hawk Feather Farm. Fern, that's a great question. And I think that's probably a workshop we should have soon. Yeah. Okay, so, oh, here's my slide on ecological succession. Okay, so when we're thinking about building a food forest, we are mimicking nature. So we're trying to create our own ecosystem. So in order to do that, just to touch on this again, we need to understand how natural ecosystems work. So this is called, this is like a classic diagram about ecosystem succession. So what I'm more interested in this picture is, what's happening in the soil levels during this whole process. So as you know, we start with bare rock. And then over, decades and decades, and sometimes hundreds of years, we end up with herbaceous, pioneer species. So this is a great indicator as well of what your soil is doing. If you see a lot of pioneer species, you know that you have bacterially dominated soil. And pioneer species are things like fireweed. So if you think about what grows first in a forest after a fire. And I used to do forest firefighting. So this is all stuff that I've learned firsthand, but you do see a lot of fireweed. You see a lot of things like willow, lupins, a lot of all those kind of the plants that get things started. Goldenrod lets you know that you're really early in the succession of an ecosystem. So you're not really super established yet. So when you're growing a garden, you want your soil to be probably with some bacterially dominated soil and also some fungally dominated. So you want to mix. But in a food forest, so in a perennial system, you want more fungally dominated. So you want to get closer to that climax ecosystem. soil. So for a food forest, like the way you would probably prepare the soil is, I would probably get some testing done if you can. If not, just use all of these indicators that we've been showing you. You could also find wood shavings, so not chips because that's too thick. And be careful what species you use, but you can mix some wood shavings into your soil to prepare it. You could use mycorrhizal fungi on your roots when you're planting things so that you have a lot of good fungal, activity. But yeah, I thought this was really interesting to show you because it's really important, especially when thinking about doing a perennial garden. So if you're doing your regular annual garden, again, you want somewhere in between here. But if you're trying to build a perennial system, you need to make sure that your soil is up to par. So sometimes that can be hard. So what plants to choose? This is the fun part. So if you don't really have a good plant knowledge, it might be good to get yourself maybe a reference book that just, or maybe like a Reader's Digest, textbook with all of the garden plants, annuals, perennials, and sort of just start getting familiar with it. Or go hang out with a really good gardener for the day or two and help them in their garden. But, when we're putting together and we're building this ecosystem, we have to kind of fulfill a whole bunch of roles within the soil and within the ecosystem. So part of those things are going to be, attracting pollinators. So using plants that are for nectar. So we want to make sure that we are still attracting those beneficial insects. We want to be deterring pests. So we would use aromatic pest confusers. So things like lemon balm that would just freak out pests. We want to use a lot of ground cover. So one thing you're always going to, one thing you will never see in the forest is bare soil. So one thing you never want to see in your garden is bare soil. So you either want to use mulch or you want to use some kind of ground cover. Like chickweed or clovers and things like that. So in our gardens, we always use straw in the garden to mulch in between the rows when we're planting vegetables. And that's so that we're not allowing carbon to escape, but we're also creating a really good environment for beneficial insects and earthworms and things like that. And we're helping the soil get to that next level by doing that. If your soil, if you've got all this beautiful black earth that you've brought in to do a veggie garden or a perennial garden, and you let the soil bake in the sun all day and dry out, you're not doing yourself any favors. So the best thing you could do is really mulch your garden and figure out how to create your own mulch. And I'll talk about that in a minute. We also want to protect. So when we talk about protecting our trees or our plants from pests, we could also use barrier plants, like for, garlic. So we could plant garlic around the base of an apple tree to stop any kind of, fungal activity from happening that we don't want, like bad funguses. So the one I'm doing last here, or the two that I'm doing last, are dynamic accumulators. And I have lists for these and I'll send them to you guys so you can look at what all these different plants are. So dynamic accumulators are like plants that pull up a variety of minerals and nutrients, and they hold them in their leaves. So like comfrey does this. So comfrey will pull up all these, and so does like lamb's quarter. So a lot of, weeds that we would normally just pull out of the garden and throw away or put in the compost, you can actually just cut those leaves off and use them as mulch in the garden, because they're pulling up all of these nutrients and minerals that are now going to be available to the other plants in the garden. So you want to use them to mulch so that they break down and they can reintegrate into the soil. So by pulling out your weeds and throwing them in the compost, you're not cycling your nutrients as best as you could. Or you're not, well, I guess if you're putting them in the compost, you're putting the compost back in the garden. So that's good. But you always want to you don't want to use any kind of weeds in the compost that have seeds, though, just as a little tidbit. So nitrogen fixers are plants that, these are all like superpowers, by the way. Nitrogen fixers are plants that literally capture nitrogen from the air, from the atmosphere, and hold them in their roots so that other plants around them can access nitrogen better. So those are things like sea buckthorn berries, I think alders. So let's see here. Comfrey, so this is my dynamic accumulator list, and I got this in my permaculture course. So I just added these in here because it's a great little resource for you. But yeah, dynamic accumulators can be a lot of things. And so in a food forest, you know, you see like stinging nettle, dandelion, they accumulate a lot of elements. So you're going to want to use ones that, you know, more in your garden that can accumulate a lot more. So I definitely use lamb's quarters, comfrey. What else do I use? Nettle. I use a lot of mint too because I love it. Chickweed is one that I use a lot because I love to add it to everything in, like, you know, dressings and stuff like that, salad dressings. So yeah, so I'm going to send these lists to you guys and you can use these to kind of build your own little food forest plans. But yeah, let's move on. So of course, then we have, you know, our ground covers and all the things I just mentioned. So ground covers are a great way to keep the carbon in the soil and provide really good habitat for all those beneficial insects. So of course, you know, we have things like red clover, which is a really common one. Greek oregano is a really good one. That is a perennial. What other ones have I? Chives are pretty good for the garden. Calendula is an annual, but it reseeds pretty readily, so it's great to use as well. And it's really handy to have for skin stuff. What other ones do I use a lot? Thyme, mint. I haven't really used Irish moss much, but yeah, these are a great list of just kind of an idea of what kind of things you could use for ground cover. I've actually used lupins for ground cover too, because they're really thick, or they can become very thick. So aromatic pest confusers are things that will like confuse pests. So, and what's doing that is the essential oil in the plant, or the, yeah. So anything that has like a really strong smell has the ability to do this, to kind of, you know, throw you off the scent. Throw the pest off the scent of an apple, for example, and of an apple tree. So of course, garlic would do that. And we know we use that a lot for like natural pesticides. Horseradish is another one that I'm not surprised. But yeah, most of these are all culinary herbs, and especially like things like nasturtiums are really great to have in the garden to eat because they taste like black pepper, and you can add them to salads. So all of these things have really important jobs to do in the ecosystem that you're creating, but also as a need for yourself. So yeah. Okay, so let's get into the fun part. So now that we have kind of an idea of all the different elements that we want to include in a food forest, we now have to build our guilds. So guilds are like little groupings that you kind of plan and plant together so that they all support each other like a real ecosystem. So, you know, the apple tree will lose its leaves in the fall and provide all of that mulch. The comfrey, you can chop those leaves off and lay them on the ground all over the place to create more mulch and to feed the soil. Yeah. Okay, so diversity equals resilience. So this is a really great little tidbit. So you always want to make sure that you're using really diverse plants and that you're trying to use or input as much diversity as possible because it creates resilience. So, you know, if you have a pest that's coming in and it wants to destroy all of your apples, and it's got to get through this kind of like, you know, this whole pest confusing, you know, little gauntlet here. So it's got to have to get through the horseradish and the lemon balm. And by the time it gets to the apple tree, you know, you probably had time to notice that something's happening by then. Or it also, like, you know, if we had 17 apple trees in a row here, the pest problem would probably get so out of control quickly that you'd have to use pesticides. You wouldn't really have a choice. It's either that or lose your whole crop, right? And so those are the reasons why we use not great methods when we're growing. So yeah, guilds create built-in resilience. So the diversity of a guild protects it from pest damage, severe climate, etc. So you're also creating like differences in like how the wind is coming into your ecosystem, and you can sort of control all those things. It requires less input over time. So just like a forest, you know, you're kind of hoping to get all of those elements put in up front, and then over time, the nutrient cycle sort of picks up, and you just, you know, you just maintain it a little bit here and there. You take out some things that you want to eat, you make sure that things are mulched, you kind of go in and check it out, but there's not a lot of watering that usually needs to happen later in the later years, or maintenance, other than, you know, pruning and things like that. What else do we have? Yeah, and then, you know, based on some research that's happened, you also usually get higher yields and increased nutrient density in this kind of a guild, because the plants are working so well together and supporting each other, and there's so much microbial activity happening and diversity, that's just what happens naturally as we get way more nutrient density and we get higher yields. Yeah, so guilds provide disease control, pollination, fertilizer, and more. So I found this really cool PDF on different guilds by Midwest Permaculture, and you can Google that if you want and check it out. So in this case, we have a service tree, which is sort of like it's a Saskatoon berry tree. And then we have, so this is one that I thought could probably survive in zone 3 in Timmins. So you could do a Saskatoon berry tree, plant some horseradish around it. You know, you've got your comfrey with your horseradish, so they can kind of, they're both very aggressive. So they kind of keep each other in check and they balance each other. Spring bulbs or mint can go around the base of the tree or close to the base of the tree. So the bulbs can be anything like daffodils, you know, different perennial bulbs like that, or even garlic or onions. They also have lemon balm in here, which is pretty cool. So the lemon balm is an aromatic pest confuser, so it deter pests. What else do they have here? They have all of their different, you know, kitchen herbs, dill, parsley, coriander. They also have hazel in here. So hazel is one of those things that would kind of take up some space in the middle. So because the apple tree will eventually be pretty tall, the hazelnut tree is sort of stays in that shrub kind of layer. They also have strawberries and borage. So strawberries are really like alpine strawberries, and woodland strawberries are great for ground cover, and they provide a little bit of food. And they also have a semi-dwarf fruit tree. So this is a really intense guild. I have a couple that I'll show you at the end that I made up for our farm here, but they're not this intense. So when you're getting started, it's great to just, you know, do some diversity, but see how it goes. And then you can add things over time. So you also don't have to do this all in year one. So here's some more examples. I'm just moving my little people out of the way. Yeah, so this is some examples of some other guilds. So we have the Three Sisters, which everybody knows about. It's pretty famous. It's one that I love to mention because it's like, oh yeah, I can connect that. So we have the corn, which is like the main like food, like it's a staple food, sort of the central point. And then we have the pole beans that fix nitrogen. So they help to, so the corn is a heavy feeder, but the beans are kind of bringing nitrogen back into the soil. And then the squash is doing the ground cover for us. You could also add like an aromatic herb underneath there just to keep pests away and keep them off of your corn or your beans. So yeah, I love that. This is another one I found online that I thought was really pretty and cool. I just kind of was Googling guilds to give you guys some examples to sort of try and, you know, inspire you to draw your own guilds. But we have, I think this is like an apple. I don't know if it even said, I was looking for it the other day, but I love this one because we can grow most of these plants here in Timmins and they're all very, very useful. So we have clover and lupin, which would be nitrogen fixers. So those are planted all the way around the bottom of the tree. We have mint, because those are, you know, they're confusing pests, but they're also attracting beneficial insects. Strawberries as ground cover. So you could use like wild strawberries, like woodland strawberries, or a different kind if you want to. Comfrey, I mean, who doesn't want to grow comfrey in their garden? You can use it to make compost tea, or you can just chop it and drop it. And it does great things for the soil. So again, we have more mint, creeping thyme, or creeping oregano and thyme for more ground cover. So you can see here how we're creating an ecosystem. And you can actually also grow goji berries up here. I've ordered a few plants, but I've never made it work. So I'm kind of one of those people that I'll plant it somewhere, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm not babying it. You gotta sort of be able to be hardy and stick it out if you want to stay in my garden. So yeah, so rings of bulbs. So it says onion, society garlic, irises, which I love. Irises would be a great barrier plant. And then calendula. We use tons of calendula in our business. We make calendula cream and calendula salve. It's also really good for your body to drink as a tea. So, I mean, who wouldn't want this in their backyard or their front yard? You know, like, it's pretty amazing. And then a really, really simple one that I mentioned yesterday on CBC radio was comfrey and mint. I think it's because I had this page open. I was building it when he was interviewing me. And this is one that I love. And another one that I love equally is like sweetgrass and sage, because they're both pretty aggressive. I love planting aggressive things together and seeing, you know, how they keep each other in check. So in this case, the comfrey and the mint are, you know, covering the soil really, really well. They both attract those pollinators. My honeybees love these little bushes. And yeah, and they do a really good job. They like fill a space, and they're beautiful, and they're really aromatic. So I think I put a little bit more info. I don't know if I mentioned everything here. So I don't know if comfrey is in our nectary list, but I know that the bees love those little purple flowers. So yeah, dynamic accumulator. So those comfrey, the comfrey has like very hardy roots, and they're like tap roots, and they go way down, and that's what pulls up all those nutrients. So everybody who doesn't know what comfrey is going to want to grow it after this workshop. Okay, so this is one that comes out of a book that I have somewhere. Oh, here it is. No, is this it? Forgot to grab it. So this is a planting that I'm going to be sharing with the community gardens here in Timmins. And it comes out of this book. Oh, I can't see myself. Hold on. Here we are. And I have a picture of it at the end, so you can order it if you're really interested. But this came out of this one, and I really love this because you could adapt this and put this into like a community garden planting, and you wouldn't worry too much about the perennial aspects getting out of hand, because it's comfrey and asparagus. Although, and those are right here. So although if you miss a little piece of the comfrey root and you chop it up and you kind of spread it around in your garden, they will all sprout, all those little tiny little pieces of roots. And that's been a big problem for parts of our garden. So just keep that in mind. But they are at the community gardens here, the local ones, they are allowing some perennials this year. So I thought this would be fun to sort of share how all of these different plants work together. And this is essentially companion planting. And Louise and I were talking about this. She was like, I really want to do a companion planting session. And I said, well, I'm touching on it a lot today. So we have here a salsa garden, of course. So we have the tomato and basil. And, you know, if you've done any kind of research on companion planting, you'll know that growing basil with tomatoes makes everything taste better. So it makes your tomatoes taste better. Borage is really, really great for planting with anything, because number one, it's not too aggressive. It's an annual, but it reseeds fairly readily. So it's nice to have around. What else do we have here? What did I mention down here? So they all benefit from fungicide. Yeah. because I don't know if you guys have had this issue with basil, but I don't think I've ever grown basil without getting that like black parts on the leaves eventually. They just like every year it just does that. But if I feel like if we planted them with all of these things, like with hot peppers and you know, all of these fungicides, I don't think that that would happen, but we'll have to try a little tester. So what else do we have here? Yeah, so I like that they talk about how, you know, they're planting all of the plants sort of like randomly so that they all get sort of, you know, shared access to the sun. So, you know, if you're planting things in rows and you're going east to west, of course, they're also going to get pretty even sun exposure. But in this way, yeah, you're just getting the added benefits of all of the different relationships between all the different plants sort of supporting each other. And that's really what food forests are all about. Is it's really at the, you know, at the baseline, it's about companion planting. So I'll send, well, this will be in the little package that I send to Louise for you guys, but so you can look at it a little bit better. So now that we know a little bit about food forests, how much time do we have? Like maybe 10 minutes, Louise?
Yeah, and then we can do a Q&A if you have time.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I'm just going to run through this quickly. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we just purchased a property last year. We moved in the fall. And so we're doing all of these things to figure out where are we going to put our food forests. We have all these trees on order. They're coming in 2 weeks. And we're kind of in the middle of figuring out like, okay, where are we going to do this? Because we don't have any soil prepared. And sometimes, you know, we got a little too excited in those cold winter months. It was a really long winter. And so we ordered a whole bunch of stuff. So, you know, but we have been doing a lot of work in the background. So, you know, we did get excited. We did order like probably too many trees, but we also have been doing a whole full year of observations. So we actually started looking at the property last spring and we bought it in June and then we moved in September. So we've been around for now for a full entire year. So that gives us a really good idea of where we should be planting things and where we shouldn't. Just based on winds, where the drifts are, where we're putting snow, where the water's moving in the spring. You know, we had this big spring going right across our driveway. So we've done baseline soil samples in a bunch of areas, and that was really helpful. Another thing we thought about, and I made this for another presentation, but I love sharing it because I think, you know, we always think like, oh, I want a food forest right here, or I want to put a garden right here. But is that really where the best place for it is? I know, you know, we always kind of think like we want to be organized and we have all these ideas about what we want, but we also have to ask like, what does the land want? And what are our values? So, yeah, so, you know, the first 2 places we thought about putting a food forest and we thought that would be the best place for it. It's not going to work there. The soil's too compact. There's too much heavy clay. It's too exposed to huge drifting, you know, huge drifts in the winter and like hard winter winds. So we had to look at other places to put it. So yeah, this is our, what are your values? What do you want? And what does the land want? And there's that one little sweet spot that you can find when you're planning your stuff. And that's right in the middle. So right now we're collecting data and we're doing an ecological design process with the designer. So part of that data collection has been to like figure out what are all the plants that grow around us, and that will tell us what the best plants to choose to grow are. So, you know, if we have wild Saskatoons, then we know that we should probably order the garden varieties of those and plant them because we know that this place can support those plants. Or if we know that we have lots of raspberries, which we do, tons of wild raspberries, then we know that this place can support all those garden varieties of raspberries that are good heavy producers. Or even when we're talking about cherries. So if we have a lot of choke cherries and pin cherries around, well, then we know that this place can support those garden varieties of cherries that produce a lot, and we can build guilds around them and get them going. So these are all the things that we've been doing to collect data. So we've been taking pictures of all the different plants. This is a picture of our property. So we have like a big pond right here. This is a huge south-facing slope that's totally protected, like a sun bowl, like a trap. So I think that's where we're going to put it. Except we have to, this is our house and our driveway. So we have to actually get across a little creek in a wetland to get there. So we're not totally sure yet. So of course we have irises that grow all around. So we can transplant those or we can use those to our advantage. We have skullcap that grows all the way around this pond or this little lake. I'm not really sure what it is. And wild mint, we have, wild strawberries. We have jewelweed, which is another one of those pioneer species. I found a huge, look at these huge rhubarbs. So we found these humongous rhubarb plants that we're going to be able to use in all of our guilds that have been growing there for probably 100 years. So since like early pioneering days, it looks like. These are high bush cranberries. So we know that we can grow those around here. And then we also have tons of really great spruce trees that we can transplant and do wind blocks with and windrows. We also had our friend Mandy come out and do drone footage with us of the whole property, and we caught 4
so it seems to be testing okay.
And we had 4 female or cow moose back here overwintering. So we were able to find a lot of really cool information by spending the year just exploring and observing. And I feel like that's really important part of, planning a food forest is just spending a lot of time observing. So another really fun thing that we got to do was our friend Jen is actually helping us do an ecological design and whole farm plan. And so she's helping us with our guilds and planning them and designing them, and also helping us design the whole property. So that means like how to move the water around the property so we have access to water everywhere, how to like where to position things so we're not walking back and forth 100 kilometers a day trying to do all of our chores on the farm. So she's been really amazing. I would highly recommend checking out her website and following her on social media. She shares a ton of really, really good information. So this year in action, we placed our orders. So I would say that if you've never placed tree orders before, place them very early in the season. So January, February. Otherwise, a lot of the species and the trees that belong in our hardiness zone get sold out very fast. And normally in all these places like hardy fruit tree, you'll get trees that are bare rooted. So you want to make sure that you've prepared your holes and prepared your areas before the trees come so that you can get them in the ground, especially if you order like 10 trees. Digging 10 big holes is going to be a big job. So having all of that prepared before your plants get there is really, really important. Okay, so these are ones I just made today because I thought would be fun to just try and design a couple of guilds that would work in Timmins in a lot of places, as long as your soil's good and you've got good sunlight and good water access. So we ordered a pear tree. We ordered a couple. So I thought, okay, if we planted a pear tree, and then we planted the garlic around the base of the tree for this year, just to protect it from any kind of, nasty pests. And then we also added a few little rose shrubs, since garlic and roses work really well together. They encourage each other's growth, but they also create like a more aromatic flower in the roses. And then adding horseradish around the edges with clover. So the clover would be the nitrogen fixer. The garlic would be those barrier plants. The horseradish, we use a lot for our products. So we make fire cider and we use a lot of horseradish. So yeah, so we could keep harvesting it and keeping it in check. So that's us keeping the horseradish in check. And, the roses would be great for encouraging pollinators to come in and that kind of stuff. So not the best visual, but you kind of get the idea. So early on, you don't necessarily have to do everything, in year one. You can kind of see how things work, and things won't work sometimes. And then you just, you change your strategy. So in this case, there's a little bit of grass here. Obviously, we don't want any grasses coming up. We'd rather have clover and other types of ground cover. So let's see, what did I write here? So the pear is the main overstory, the fruit producer. It shades the horseradish. So I'd probably put the horseradish north of the tree so that it's really getting a lot of shade and it's keeping it in check. Horseradish is super aggressive, so just be aware. Yeah, so the tree would drop its leaves in the fall for the natural mulch and to like give that, you know, that nutrient cycling. Cuttings can be propagated and new trees can be propagated from those cuttings. Roses are your shrub layer, so they attract the pollinators. They're great for nectar. I use them a ton for our business. We make a rose cream. The horseradish, again, using for the business. It's that aromatic pest confuser. Yeah, you can chop and drop that foliage. So if you don't want to use the roots, you just can chop the leaves down and use it to feed the soil and to create that nice habitat for the soil. The garlic is that barrier plant, and then clovers are that nitrogen fixer. That's the main reason. There's also another kind of clover called, I think it's called aslick. No, that doesn't sound right. Aslike. Anyway, you can find it, but it's like it's a combination between white. I think it grows wild. I saw it in one of my books. It's the most beautiful smelling clover I have ever smelled, but I'll find the right word. I don't think that's what it is. Or if it is, I'm not saying it properly, but it's a great one. Okay, and then here's another guild that I just made up today. This is the last one. So this is using a Norkent apple tree, which we ordered from Hardy Fruit Tree Nursery. So this would be an apple tree. So that's our staple food. So that's one of our main food sources, like potatoes, beets, carrots, garlic and onions and that kind of stuff. So again, we'll use that leaf litter from the apple tree as it matures, especially. It's great, it's great at bringing in birds and pollinators. And the lupins are one of my favorite wildflowers, and they are also nitrogen fixers, which is a really fun, it's a really fun thing to use. So they also work well as a ground cover in the understory of trees and things like that. They're native species, which is really important. And then we also have comfrey over here. These guys. So the comfrey would be great as a barrier plant, again, because they have those deep tap roots. Not a lot of plants, in my experience, can really take over where comfrey is hanging out. Like it's really good at holding space. So, hold space under that apple tree. That's great. And then we can also use our mint. So, and then I added for long-term planning purposes, I added a sea buckthorn tree that I would probably keep pruned because it's also a nitrogen fixer. So as our soil succession kind of gets more mature and we get closer to that, like fungally dominant soil towards that climax ecosystem, the lupins might not want to grow there anymore because the lupins are pioneer species. So over time, like in 7 years or more even, the lupins might decide, I don't want to grow there anymore, but I still want to have a nitrogen fixer. So that's where the sea buckthorn tree would come in. I hope that's making sense. So here's my little resource page. Now these guys are pretty local. Beautiful Field Farm is in Sudbury. I placed a lot of like a pretty large order through these guys this year. Really liked them. They have a really amazing website with so many resources, and they're really great for asking questions too. And he's really an expert. So we also have locally, we have 80 Creek Gardens. Yeah, they have a pretty good, operation there, and they're fairly local. What else do we have? Yeah, Richter's is a really great one for seeds, but also they have plants that they'll send you in the mail. So you can order like sea buckthorn trees, elderberry trees, that kind of stuff. And some other ones, I used Whiffle Tree for a few things this year too. Fiddlehead Nursery came highly recommended, but you have to go there and get the plants, I think. So these are some of the books that I was talking about earlier. So I actually have this one on my desk right now too, because it doesn't really focus too much on gilding or anything like that, but it's a great one for just like overall systems, and like if you're really interested in homesteading and how to kind of mix all those systems in. Yeah, and then I have these two. These are more like, these are a little bit drier, but they have a lot of good information if you like textbooks. And then this is the one I was showing you earlier. This is pretty great. I also have, I showed this one to Louise earlier too, but I found this one at Value Village and I absolutely love it because it really focuses on companion planting. So yeah, so this is a great one. There's also another one in this series that's like garlic and roses. And let's see. Oops. Yeah, and I think that's it. So the only thing I wanted to do was show you, you know, this is like Hardy Fruit Tree Nursery. So this is where I ordered a lot of the trees and the plants that we got this year. So they have a really great website, and I love that it's like a really great resource. So, you know, you can either buy your trees in 1 to 2 feet, you know, like a couple of years old, or a 3 to 5 feet. So that means you're getting fruit sooner. So this is a zone 2 apple tree. These are the this is a zone, I would try and stick with zone 2 fruit trees if you're in Timmins or you're in a zone 3. And that's just to be safe because it's a pretty big investment. So you want to make sure that you're going to have really nice hardy trees. The great thing I love about this website is like all of this information is just readily available. So it talks about the fruit, how to store the fruit, the tree, its origins, all of this, like the stats around the tree. Like, what do you want to know? Like, how much sun does it need? How big is it going to get? How much space should you add between there? And then you're getting them as bare root trees, which is, there's a whole reason why they do it, and it's really great quality. Yeah, they talk about the rootstock. So I would highly recommend, just like if you're really interested in food forests or like polycultures or orchards or anything like that, to just go onto these websites, these tree websites, and look around and read about it. Okay, so I'm gonna move back over to my presentation, and I'll just leave it there for a sec. Yeah, do we have any, like, does anybody have any questions? I don't know, that I feel like I was maybe that was just like touching sort of the surface of food forestry, but I wanted to sort of give you a taste of all the little things so you could kind of do your own research about it.
Absolutely. So let me finish my end of our presentation, and then we'll
Sure.
Go with the Q&A.
Okay.
Just real quick, guys, we'll just do the...
Oh, we're also looking for volunteers to come help us plant our food forest. So if you're interested, email me and I'll put you on our volunteer list. Might be some good experience.
And it's always a great time when you do these things to share in resources, and you're still learning. So yes, you're volunteering time, but you're learning so much where things go, where, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And also, and I'm learning from other people as well.
Absolutely.
So it's all about
always,
like, it's a community thing, right?
Yep.
So
it sure is. So I just wanted to let or remind everybody of the resources that the library has as well. So she had that, Rachel was recommending this really great food forest book. It is phenomenal, but we've also got all these other ones that are just coming in. So really great resources. And don't forget, we always have Hoopla as well. And look at like new gardening books ordered. These are just the new ones that I've ordered this year.
Yeah. The last one on your last page, the
permaculture one,
the permaculture property. So that's who I learned permaculture from. So that's who I did my permaculture design course with. They are pretty awesome.
It's almost like a textbook though. It's not for just anyone, but it has got a wealth of information. And you know, when it comes to nonfiction, you don't have to read the whole book. You read what you want in it. That's the whole fun.
Totally.
So these are all the brand new, pardon me?
Yeah, so I was gonna say there's actually really great exercises in that one too. Like they have a lot of like, you go off and do your own, you know, like exercises and then come back and do the next chapter.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool. So these ones here are brand new on order. You can place your holds. And I also wanted to let everybody know that we are having a Seed Library logo contest. It finishes in 2 days. So if you haven't started, you're going to have to get going. But we're looking to brand the Seed Library a little bit. Even if you're not a designer, you can always come and vote in May. And May, sorry. So beginning of May is going to show up and you're going to have the month to vote. So your votes are wanted. We also have the seed library here. We do have quite a bit this year. We've had a lot of donations. Please, please, please come on in, check things out. The more we check it out and you grow and bring back, the more we create seeds that are biodiverse for our area, which means the genetics have been changed. It makes it so it's easier to grow here. We also have 2 more sessions popping up next week. I believe it's Tuesday. Yeah, on May 3rd, we have an invasive versus native plants with our master gardener. And my colleague is also having the spring bird migration session as well. So thank you, Rachel, and to all for attending and for watching.